stood there at the kitchen sink ready to scream. Have you ever been there? So what was happening was my 5-year-old son refused like anything I suggested. And he cried and he flung himself down on the couch when I asked him just to like unload the dishwasher. And at that time, I would do anything to get this screaming to stop. I suggested, why don't you try eating something? Because hangry is a huge, huge problem in our house. And I was met by, nope, we don't have anything. And I told him, you should go to the other room to calm down. And he looks at me and then he screams, ah! And he stomps off to the guest room and slams the door. And at that time, I want to desperately go after him and I want to hold him and I want to make him happy again. But his screaming drives me so crazy, and yet I hate to see him so sad. But I realized something about myself that stopped me from actually running after him. And this may be affecting you too. So have you read Do It Scared yet? Like, it's right here. And let me fill you in. My friend Ruth Soukup wrote this book to help people realize the fear holding them back in life and then taking the steps to overcome it. But it also helps you in parenting. So Mahatma Gandhi said, if you want to change the world, start with yourself. You've heard this quote, right? So I take that one step further. If you want to change your kids, start with yourself. I hate to admit it, but kids, they are the biggest mirrors. When my son walks into a room when he's upset, slams the door, like, I recognize that behavior. It's so familiar to me because I've done the exact same thing and he has seen me do it. But where do we even begin if we want to make a positive change in ourselves as parents? Like, where do we actually start? We need to know what exactly is holding us back. So first, what I want you to do is I want you to go take the Do It Scared Fear assessment. You're going to find the link below this video. It's really quick and it'll give you a quick glimpse into the fear that has the biggest impact on your life. So Ruth divides it into 7 fear archetypes, and I'm going to walk you through them. See if you can guess which one is your strongest, and then you can go and take the test. So number 1, first one, people pleaser. This is my strongest fear, and it shows up in my parenting all the time. You know how I desperately want to make my son happy? That's where my people pleaser comes out. And while being a people pleaser makes me relatively easy to get along with, it also makes my life a little bit harder. Because people pleasers, they tend to never want to appear foolish or silly. They don't ever want to let people down, and they care deeply about what other people think. Does this describe you? Because of this, I struggle to say no, and I also have this tendency of letting others walk all over me. I yell and I cry sometimes because I haven't set strong boundaries. I've said yes to everything, and now I feel overcommitted, which usually leads to a complete emotional breakdown. Now, this is a constant tension when I'm parenting. However, simply knowing it helps me actively fight against it, and that is really how this book, Do It Scared, has helped me. So second fear archetype, procrastinator. Friends who take the fear archetype assessment and get that result always respond, no, that's not me, but then they read a little bit deeper. The procrastinator archetype is your typical perfectionist. Procrastinators are people who postpone or avoid things they don't feel competent in, get depressed when you make mistakes, and they also like to plan ahead in order to allow as much time as possible. Like, does this sound like you? How hard on yourself are you as a parent? Do you criticize yourself if you yell or make a mistake? If so, your yelling might be because you're being too hard on yourself. Since your expectations aren't getting met, you're becoming super frustrated. I can relate to that. Third one, outcast. Would you do anything to avoid rejection? You might be an outcast. This fear archetype was really strong on me too, and as my daughter enters her teenage years, I've been struggling when she outright rejects me and my help. It comes out as anger or sarcasm, but simply knowing that I have a strong outcast and how it affects me helps me walk away until I can process my emotions. I say less that would potentially hurt her because I know my natural tendency to overreact to that behavior. Outcasts tend to believe that people will let them down. They feel like they don't fit or belong, and they could be sensitive to any perceived rejection. It may not be real, it may just be perceived. So as parents, outcasts tend to be introverted. This may cause you to resist asking for help as a parent and insist on going at it alone. All this fear of rejection, which, my gosh, kids are experts at doling out, combined with your lack of support, can cause you to lose your cool. Fourth one, rule follower. If you insist on always doing things the right or best way, you may be a rule follower. As a rule follower, you tend to see parenting situations in two ways: the right way and the wrong way. There is no in between. There is no gray area, and parenting really is a lot of gray area. So with your kids, you like to look out for them to make sure they're making good decisions. You like to be right, and you like to avoid chaos and uncertainty. And these aren't really bad things, but parenting can get messy, and as a result, you might get easily stressed. You probably also feel anxious when your kid behaves in an unpredictable way, and you have zero clear course of action. Next one, are you a self-doubter? Do you constantly fear that you aren't a good enough mom? You might have self-doubter as your dominant fear archetype. Self-doubters tend to be very hypocritical of themselves and of others, feel unqualified and not enough of anything, and they struggle with the negative self-talk. Because of this, self-doubters may pick apart their kids' behaviors, which could cause tension in your relationship. And they fight back, your kids do, you react, and bam, yelling begins. Or could you be an excuse maker? This one is a bit hard to swallow, but it is so important to acknowledge if you have this behavior. Excuse makers have trouble taking responsibility or being blamed. They are reluctant to take charge or make decisions. They're hesitant to share their own opinion for fear of being held to that opinion. Excuse makers also feel that the reason they're being held back is that there is no one there to help them. They lack support or leadership. That's the problem, they think. In your parenting, this may appear by blaming others for your child's behavior instead of holding your child accountable. For instance, it's the other kid's fault that Bobby hit him. Or possibly it's the teacher's fault that Melissa is feeling. I know, this one's a hard one to swallow. But since you can't control other people's actions, you feel out of control and helpless. Or could it be a pessimist? This one shows up a lot in parenting. This is someone who tends to see a stumbling block or hardship as a reason to stop instead of push through. A pessimist believes that other people have it harder than her. For example, her kids are more difficult than anyone else's kids, and there's no solution to her problems. If you're a pessimist, you may feel hopeless about your kids' behavior, and this can affect your mood and your relationships with your kids. When you know your fear archetype, you can be and approach parenting more easily. Knowing where and how you struggle is hard to admit. It's difficult to face our weaknesses. But know that each of the fear archetypes has positive traits as well, and Ruth takes you through all of them in Do It Scared, as well as how to break through them. You'll have insights into some of your biggest parenting struggles through this book. I really urge you to pick up the book. It is on Amazon as Kindle and Audible. You can order it as a hardcover. You can go to Barnes & Noble. You can go to Target. Go and get it. It is so helpful, and I will see you later.